Bonjour tout le monde. Avant de commencer avec les bonnes nouvelles d'aujourd'hui, je veux prendre un moment pour envoyer toutes nos pensées et notre appui aux familles en Nouvelle-Écosse qui vivent des moments épouvantables de perte. Before I begin, I do want to express the support of all Canadians for families in Nova Scotia who are facing devastating news yesterday and today. We will continue to be with them. What a team. I am so excited about putting forward this incredible team of Canadians who will continue the hard work of stepping up to support people, to create great jobs, to grow the economy in ways that works for everyone. This is a positive step in a moment of consequential impact in the world and in the country. We know times are challenging, but this is the team that is going to be able to continue the hard work, rolling up their sleeves and delivering for Canadians from coast to coast to coast as we build a brighter and ambitious future for all Canadians. C'est un grand plaisir d'être ici pour présenter l'équipe qui va se retrousser les manches pour continuer de travailler, pour livrer concrètement pour les Canadiens, pour créer des bons emplois, pour aider avec les coûts de la vie, pour continuer de mener sur la réconciliation, sur la lutte contre les changements climatiques, avec une vision positive et ambitieuse pour le pays. Je suis très excité qu'on se mette au travail dans les moments à venir, mais je suis très content de vous voir en si grand nombre ici aujourd'hui et j'ouvre aux questions.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Merci, Premier ministre. We have time for 15 minutes for questions from media. Nous avons 15 minutes pour les questions des médias et on va commencer avec Ryan Tumulty from the National Post.
Yeah, good morning, Prime Minister. Can you explain your decision to fire Marco Mendicino, Mona Forte, and David Lametti and remove them entirely from your cabinet?
I want to thank everyone who has served this country and this cabinet so well over the past number of years. This is a moment where putting forward the strongest possible team with fresh energy and a range of skills that are going to be able to continue the really important work of showing Canadians the positive and ambitious vision for the future that we're so committed to and that I know Canadians need and deserve. I'm really excited about the work we're doing, and quite frankly, we have a huge team in caucus and across the country working really hard to deliver for Canadians in all sorts of great ways.
Pourriez-vous répéter en français, s'il vous plaît?
Je soulignais qu'il y a des gens qui ont très, très bien servi leur pays, leur communauté et ce cabinet pendant de longues années. Et je les remercie et je leur souhaite encore du beau travail au sein de notre équipe pour continuer à livrer pour les Canadiens. Mais dans ces moments de conséquences, je voulais mettre de l'avant l'équipe appropriée, une équipe extrêmement forte pour répondre aux besoins du moment et pour continuer de mener avec ambition et optimisme et une vision positive de ce pays que je sais sera incarnée par l'équipe que j'ai ici avec moi aujourd'hui.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Premier ministre. Valérie Gamache de Radio-Canada. 23 portefeuilles qui changent de main, 7 nouveaux visages au cabinet. Est-ce que ça allait si mal que ça? Et étiez-vous si mal préparé pour des élections qu'il faille faire un aussi grand ménage aujourd'hui?
Je pense que les gens comprennent à quel point on est en train de vivre des moments de conséquences au pays et à travers le monde. Et donner un nouveau souffle d'énergie à cette équipe avec des nouveaux membres, mais aussi avec des nouveaux défis pour notre équipe économique, notre équipe de ministres bien rodés. J'ai hâte qu'on puisse vraiment se retrousser les manches puis s'attaquer aux grands problèmes avec l'ambition, avec une approche positive et inclusive. Je sais que les gens ont besoin d'aide, mais ont aussi besoin d'une vision claire pour l'avenir qu'on est en train de bâtir ensemble. Et je suis très excité d'avoir cette équipe à mes côtés pour cela.
Hi, Mr. Trudeau. Mackenzie Gray with Global. The latest polls today have you down 10 points to the Conservatives. You've changed 30 portfolios. You've fired 7 cabinet ministers. Is today's changes an admission that things have not gone well for your government in 2023?
On the contrary, one of the things that we've seen is even as we're seeing record job creations and inflation drop down into the range set by the Bank of Canada, we need to continue to put our very best foot forward and work even harder to deliver for Canadians. And having a renewed team with a range of new voices and new skills and experience, new challenges for our strongest ministers, to be able to step up and meet this consequential moment in the lives of Canadians, in the things happening around the world that Canadians are so well positioned to meet and thrive through. I'm excited about this team, and I'm excited about the work we're going to be able to do together.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. Raphaël Pirot de l'agence QMI. Vous avez exclu David Lametti. Premièrement, pourquoi? Et est-ce qu'il y a un lien? C'est un cabinet qui est préélectoral. Vous allez aller en élection avec ses ministres. Et donc, David Lametti qui est exclu. Est-ce qu'il y a un lien aussi avec la contestation de la loi 21 en Cour suprême qui s'en vient dans les prochaines années?
Ben, tout d'abord, c'est un cabinet pour gouverner. On espère et on s'attend à pouvoir gouverner pendant encore une couple d'années. Les élections ne sont pas prévues avant l'automne 2025. Et on a énormément de choses à faire pour livrer pour les Canadiens des dossiers importants pendant qu'on fait face à des réels défis économiques. On pense au logement, on pense aux défis qui continuent avec l'inflation, avec les taux d'intérêt. On a aussi des opportunités énormes de mener à l'échelle mondiale avec le travail que font les Canadiens. Et ce cabinet est bien positionné pour justement refléter l'énergie et l'optimisme que ressentent tellement de Canadiens, même dans des moments de conséquences et de défis. Par rapport à David, je le remercie profondément de son service. Je sais qu'il a encore énormément à contribuer au sein de notre caucus, au sein de la grande équipe libérale, et j'ai hâte de continuer de travailler avec lui dans les années à venir.
Prime Minister Christy Kirkup with the Globe and Mail. I want to follow up on the notion of kind of the internal reflection that things haven't been going so well. And I say that with all due respect and to those behind you, but public opinion polls have indicated as much, that you were really feeling the heat from the Conservatives. Tell me about, what your internal thinking is about making the change and kind of admitting that at least some part of the team needs to be changed in order to get you under from this cloud that you're in right now.
Well, let's understand. There are storm clouds all around the world right now in a range of very, very real ways. From a war ongoing in Ukraine that has impacts not just in Europe, but all around the world on food prices, on energy, on the challenges of the rise of authoritarianism and the backsliding of democracies around the world. There are challenges around foreign interference as actors are continuing to try and destabilize and sow chaos across democracies. We see the potential for a global economic slowdown as too high inflation and interest rates really hit hard around the world, and the fact that Canada is better off than many countries in the world doesn't make it any less difficult for millions of Canadians who are struggling. This is a difficult time right now for millions of people in Canada and around the world. And making sure that we have the best possible team aligned to respond to Canadians' challenges with the supports necessary, but also show that optimism, that ambition for getting us through these consequential times and building a brighter future for everyone. That's what we're focused on. That's why I'm so pleased to have such a great team with us.
Next question.
Hello, Prime Minister. Karina Roman, CBC News. You talk about this as a moment of consequence. Obviously, we're all here covering this because it's a big deal in political news, but you yourself said people are struggling to just even put food on their table. So why should the average Canadian even care who's behind you today?
Well, the reality is this is the team that's going to continue to be there delivering for Canadians. Over the past number of weeks, I've heard directly from people who've said that the grocery rebate that landed in 11 million people's bank accounts in the first week of July made a huge difference. That the fact that the Canada Child Benefit is increased on July 20th for millions of Canadians to give them even more money every month tax-free, the high cost of raising their kids. The money's coming in from the climate action rebate across the country in more provinces before. That's money in people's pockets at a time where people are worried both about affordability and the terrible impacts of climate change that we are seeing everywhere across the country, worse than ever before. This is the team that's going to continue to step up and going to continue to show that the plan we have for the future, an economy that works for all Canadians, to fight climate change in a way that supports communities and builds a brighter future for our kids and grandkids, that includes reconciliation at the heart of the economic opportunities for the country, as well as us becoming truly the country that we all know we should be, that has full respect and partnership with people who've lived in this land for millennia. These are big challenges, not small challenges, and you can't pick and choose between them. So putting forward the strongest possible economic team with the strongest possible players in all the files that are going to matter to Canadians, this is what this day is about, and this is about the work that we're going to get going on this afternoon.
En français, s'il vous plaît.
Je pense que les gens comprennent qu'on est en train de faire face à des défis à l'échelle globale. Que ce soit la guerre en Ukraine qui continue d'avoir un impact négatif sur le prix des aliments, sur les chaînes d'approvisionnement, sur l'énergie à travers le monde, particulièrement dans les pays émergents du Sud. Que ce soit l'inflation qui frappe fort à travers le monde, moins fort au Canada, les taux d'intérêt qui frappent fort, les défis au niveau du logement sur lesquels on va se concentrer dans les années à venir, dans les mois et les années à venir. Des grands défis auxquels on est en train de faire face. Je comprends que les Canadiens veulent la meilleure équipe possible pour être là, pour répondre à ces défis, pas seulement dans le moment, mais pour bâtir une vision ambitieuse, positive et responsable pour l'avenir qu'on est en train de bâtir. Il y a beaucoup de gens qui veulent s'abandonner à la peur, à la colère. Mais au Canada, on a tellement d'opportunités et de chances de s'aider les uns les autres dans ces moments difficiles, mais aussi de bâtir l'avenir meilleur auquel les gens s'attendent. Et c'est cette équipe qui va faire ça avec moi dans les mois et les années à venir.
Next question.
Alex Ballingal, Toronto Star. You talk about you're excited to govern with this team and that the next elections aren't scheduled till fall 2025. Can you commit today, now that you've done this major shuffling of the cabinet deck, that you won't pull the plug on the minority parliament before the deal with the NDP expires?
We have so much work to do over the coming years to continue being there to support Canadians while we're drawing in global investment from around the world that's creating great jobs, while we're building supply chains that respond to the need for critical minerals from reliable sources from friendly and reliable countries like Canada that we're engaged in closely with our NATO partners, with our European partners, with our G7 partners. We're continuing to step up on reconciliation in ways that the world is looking at, because it's not just a moral issue. It's a foundational economic issue about a real and fair chance for everyone who shares this land to succeed. There are lots of big things ahead, and we're going to stay focused on delivering them, because that's what Canadians want.
Prime Minister Michael Couture from CTV News. Despite your best efforts, Canadians still don't feel like they're doing better than any others across the globe. So if you're looking to try and really strengthen that economic messaging to Canadians, why are you keeping Chrystia Freeland and François-Philippe Champagne in their current roles?
We have seen inflation come down in Canada faster than many of our peer countries. We've seen Canadians supported by targeted investments that have put money in their pockets while inflation has gone down. We have an incredible economic team, and I'm so proud to be doing this with my Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland. François-Philippe Champagne has been delivering, whether it's the Volkswagen deal that's going to create thousands, tens of thousands of jobs across Southern Ontario and across the country, whether it's investments coming in from coast to coast to coast. We're bolstering that economic team with the likes of Jean-Yves Duclos, Sean Fraser, Anita Anand, and others that are going to continue to step up and make sure Canadians know that we've got their backs, but we've also got them into the kind of ambitious and optimistic future I know Canadians want, and that is a clear contrast from the brokenist philosophy that the leader of the Conservative Party continues to put forward.
En français, s'il vous plaît.
J'ai une équipe extraordinaire de gens qui sont engagés. On est en train de voir l'inflation diminuer au Canada plus rapidement que bien d'autres pays, en même temps qu'on est en train de livrer directement de l'aide aux Canadiens. On est en train d'investir dans du logement. On est en train d'attirer des investissements d'à travers le monde, de gens qui veulent faire partie de la réussite des Canadiens. Il y a énormément de raisons d'être optimiste, mais de pouvoir ajouter d'autres noms à nos filières économiques pour vraiment démontrer qu'on est bien positionné au Canada. Et ça ne veut pas dire qu'il n'y a pas des moments difficiles dans lesquels les gens sont en train de vivre. Ça, on le sait très bien. Mais on est positionné pour les aider et bâtir un avenir meilleur et positif pour tous à travers le pays.
Prime
Last
Minister,
question,
hi.
dernière question.
Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News. At a time you've admitted there is a need for a great cultural reform and change within the Canadian Armed Forces, what kind of message do you think it sends to remove a woman from defense and place a man?
I have tremendous confidence in Bill Blair. His leadership on emergency preparedness these past years has seen exactly how much Canadians need our armed forces to be there to step up with the right tools, the right abilities, but also the right culture change that Anita Anand has started in such strong ways. It actually started back under Minister Sajjan. This is something that we're all working on together and committed to as a government and as a country. And I'm really looking forward to be able to continue to work with Bill and with so many on making sure Canada and all of our institutions remain strong, responsive, inclusive, and ambitious about the future we're building. Merci beaucoup. Je veux dire à quel point j'ai hâte de pouvoir travailler avec Bill Blair, où je sais qu'il va pouvoir continuer l'excellent travail que les ministres Sajjan et Anand ont fait au niveau de la défense. Oui, il vient de travailler au niveau de la préparation aux urgences. Il a été là pour les Canadiens dans des moments difficiles. Il va continuer de pouvoir être là avec les outils nécessaires pour appuyer les forces armées canadiennes dans l'équipement et les outils dont ils ont besoin, mais aussi s'assurer qu'on continue à transformer la culture des forces armées pour bien pouvoir livrer pour les Canadiens. J'ai très hâte de tout ce qu'on va pouvoir faire ensemble avec tous les membres de notre équipe. Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
Merci, ça va mettre fin à la conférence de presse. Thank you. This will put an end to the press conference.
OK, bonjour tout le monde. Ça me fait plaisir, ça nous fait plaisir d'être ici avec vous aujourd'hui. Je suis ici avec mes collègues, les clés ministres dans l'équipe économique. Notre gouvernement sera très, très ciblé sur les défis, les enjeux économiques. On comprend que l'abordabilité, c'est un enjeu important pour les Canadiens. On comprend aussi l'importance de la croissance économique et on va travailler ensemble pour livrer pour les Canadiens. So hi everyone, really happy to be here with some beloved colleagues. This is a key part of our economic team. Our government is very focused going forward on the economy, on delivering for Canadians. We know affordability continues to be a challenge, and we are laser focused on that. And we are focused on a plan for jobs and economic growth for the future. Happy to take your questions.
Bonjour, Antoine Trépanier du journal Le Droit. Ma question est à Mme Annan. Vous arrivez au Conseil du Trésor où il y a eu une grève assez importante des fonctionnaires un peu plus tôt cette année. On parle d'enjeux d'affordabilité aussi. Est-ce que vous pouvez me dire un peu comment vous entrevoyez votre mandat au Conseil du Trésor où vous aurez sans doute la responsabilité de dire non à bien des collègues autour de la table du cabinet?
Premièrement, je voudrais dire que c'était un honneur, un privilège d'être la ministre de la Défense nationale. Et je veux remercier les forces armées canadiennes pour leur travail acharné dans notre pays et dans le monde entier. En tant que la présidente du Conseil du Trésor, c'est important de continuer de livrer avec notre politique pour les Canadiens et Canadiennes, pour notre population entière. Par exemple, avec le logement abordable, la santé mentale, les appuis pour les familles aussi. Ce sont très importants. En même temps, dans ma nouvelle position, on doit être prudent et je vais travailler avec une équipe extraordinaire sur l'économie pour s'assurer que nous pouvons livrer pour les Canadiens et Canadiennes, en même temps d'être prudents avec notre approche fiscale. Merci.
Dylan Robertson of the Canadian Press, also for Minister Anand. You had promised a culture change in the armed forces and a defense policy review. I'm not curious what you make of your successor, but I am curious to know how you feel leaving with all of this unfinished business.
As I said just now in French, it was an immense honor to be the Minister of National Defense at a time where we were and continue to be extremely focused on building a Canadian Armed Forces where every member can be respected and protected when they put on a uniform to serve our country. At the same time, we are working on the defense policy update, and I know that my colleague, Minister Blair, is very committed to each of those items, as well as providing military support for Ukraine. I am also extremely excited to work with this extraordinary team on economic policy matters. I have experience and background in the capital markets and in corporate governance. I was a professor for 25 years in these topics, in these areas, and undertook not only teaching, but the practices of law, as well as writing opinions in the area of economic policy. So I am very well placed at this moment to join a fantastic economic team and continue to execute on our government's messages. That is making life increasingly more affordable for Canadians while making sure we support the most vulnerable in our country. Thank you.
We're good. Alors, Madame Annan, restez là, pourquoi pas. En fait, mais j'ai envie de continuer dans cette lignée-là. Avez-vous l'impression de quitter la défense avec le travail qui n'est pas terminé? Parce qu'il y en avait beaucoup sur votre table. On est en pleine guerre. Vous êtes engagé encore il y a 2 semaines là, à l'OTAN. Avez-vous l'impression de laisser une table pleine?
Premièrement, je voudrais dire que depuis 2021, la fin, quand j'étais nommée comme ministre de la Défense nationale, nous avons travaillé sur beaucoup de choses. L'équipement militaire pour l'Ukraine, les changements culturels, la modernisation de NORAD, l'Indo-Pacifique. Mais ces enjeux continuent et on doit continuer comme gouvernement du Canada d'appuyer les forces armées canadiennes dans leur travail. Donc, mon travail n'arrête pas jamais. Mais comme gouvernement, nous continuons de travailler ensemble pour livrer pour nos forces armées canadiennes, en même temps pour la population canadienne entière. Merci.
No,
Oh, en anglais. So, when I was appointed to be the Minister of National Defence, the key issues on the agenda: cultural change in the Canadian Armed Forces, a free and open Indo-Pacific, modernization of NORAD, and then a few months later, the illegal and unjustifiable invasion of Ukraine were all large items on the agenda that we worked on day and night. But that work will continue under Minister Blair's leadership, and he has shown to be a very strong leader in so many other areas of our government. I am sitting down with him today to continue to brief him on the work that we were doing, but I have no doubt in my mind that he understands, given his experience, large organizations and how they work. And we will continue as a team to deliver not only for the armed forces, but for the Canadian population at large.
And just let me add one quick thing. Alors, la ministre Anita a fait un travail extraordinaire en tant que ministre de Défense nationale. Et tout le monde, toute notre équipe, commençant avec le Premier ministre, est pleine de confiance que le ministre Blair va continuer ce travail si important. Et on doit se rappeler qu'Anita était là quand la guerre contre l'Ukraine a commencé. Et elle a fait vraiment un excellent travail, et je le sais parce que les Ukrainiens me le disent. Aujourd'hui, l'enjeu, le défi principal pour le Canada, pour notre pays, c'est, comme Bill Clinton l'a dit, l'économie, l'économie, l'économie. C'est notre cible principale. Le Premier ministre a créé une équipe extraordinairement forte qui va travailler en équipe. On a travaillé en équipe contre le COVID avec François Philippe, avec Anita, avec Randy. On va continuer de faire ça parce qu'on comprend qu'aujourd'hui, maintenant, on doit se focusser sur l'économie. On doit livrer les marchandises pour les Canadiens, et c'est ce qu'on va faire ensemble.
Bien dit, bien dit.
Last question.
Thank you. Rachel Haynes here from CTV News. And Minister Freeland, if you want to stay right there, my question is just kind of following up there on what you're saying. Today, the message from the Prime Minister is that this cabinet shuffle was really to refocus on the economy. Your portfolio hasn't changed, but do you need to change your approach as Minister of Finance, since today the Prime Minister is acknowledging that it's not working?
I don't think, actually, that's what the Prime Minister said at all. I think what the Prime Minister has done today is put forward for Canadians a team which combines some really experienced ministers who have been in the trenches, who have tackled some tough challenges together, whether it is COVID or whether it is the NAFTA negotiations. We've gone through a lot together, and we're here. What he's also done is really re-energized our team and brought in some really hardworking colleagues from caucus who we all know and love and have worked with so long. And it is great to see them here too. You know, when it comes to the economy, the Prime Minister, was very clear in outlining our focus. We understand that affordability is a real challenge for Canadians. That's why we were so glad that at the beginning of this month, we were able to deliver the grocery rebate for Canadians. That is why I am so glad that at the end of this week, the Canada Workers' Benefit will start being paid in advance on a quarterly basis. That is going to help our most essential workers right now. That is why the Prime Minister was glad to be able to highlight for Canadians that the Canada Child Benefit, one of the signature measures that our government has put in place that is transforming Canada every day, has now increased and is today delivering nearly $7,500 per child for kids 6 and under. That is transforming the lives of families, and it has increased to keep up with inflation. So that is the affordability message. That's what we need to keep on doing. And what the Prime Minister also said is, we are focused on building Canada. We are building Canada with our green industrial plan. That includes the tax credits we unveiled in the budget. We need to roll those out. We need them to be in place so the money can start flowing in. That includes our electric battery investments. That absolutely includes a focus on getting houses built, because we are a growing country and we have to deliver the homes, the infrastructure, the jobs, the economy, the investment for a growing country. And that is what our team is 100% committed to do. And that's what we, this is a really important moment for Canada, because there are big challenges in the world right now. The global economy is still struggling to sort of shed the challenges created by the COVID recession and by the supply chain challenges that followed the reopening post-COVID. Canada actually is doing a really good job getting through those challenges. Inflation at 2.8% is lower than anywhere in the G7. It is back within the Bank of Canada's target range. Our economy grew by 3.1% in the first quarter, and we today have nearly 1 million more jobs than we had before COVID hit. This is a strong country responding to a really tough time in the world. But we know the job is not done. We know we need to have a really re-energized approach with our strongest players on the ice. And that's what the Prime Minister has told us he wants us to go out and do. I'm a terrible skater, so I apologize for the hockey metaphor, but I can appreciate hockey. Like Randy, I grew up in Edmonton, the age of the Oilers. So, right now it is all about skating hard, scoring some goals, and maybe checking a few people pretty hard into the boards.
That was good.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. That concludes our scrum. Merci tout le monde.
Okay, merci beaucoup.
Merci. Thanks for being here, folks. Let's focus. We're all re-energized now. Trust me, we're going to be turbocharged.
François Philippe has always been pretty energized.
Huh?
No, c'est...
Hey, listen. You're good. There's people waiting. We're turbocharged. We're going to deliver for Canadians. Trust us.
Hello, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Hi, Minister Marco Biliati with iPolitics. Your former portfolio touched upon a lot of the key priorities, we'll say, of the Liberal and NDP supply and confidence deal, pharmacare, dental care, the increased health funding. Considering that you've been moved to this different role that has perhaps less of a high profile when it comes to this really important agreement, do you feel like this is a demotion?
Well, first, I must say that it was a great fortune, a great chance to work as health minister. As you could tell, we were able to move through COVID-19 more successfully than most other comparable countries. We were also very pleased to sign important health agreements with all provinces and all territories. This being said, I am an economist by training. The Prime Minister just mentioned a couple of minutes ago that we want to focus very much on the cost of living, helping Canadians with food on the table, also helping grow the economy. And in my new role, I will have many tools to do that with my colleagues, including making sure that the contracts that these contracts are in the order of billions of dollars every year, are there to support Canadian jobs, middle-class jobs, and are there to support our transition to a new economy that will be increasing living standards for Canadians, but also creating good jobs for the future. Bien, tout d'abord, je dois dire que c'était une chance extraordinaire d'être à la santé depuis 2021. On a pu passer à travers la COVID-19, Omicron, mieux que la plupart de tous les pays comparables à travers le monde. Ça a sauvé des milliers de vies, des centaines de milliers d'hospitalisations. Ça nous a permis de sortir plus rapidement de la crise économique que nous avons vécue durant la COVID-19. Donc, une grande chance aussi d'avoir signé avec toutes les provinces et territoires des ententes historiques qui vont permettre d'investir pour mieux prendre soin des patients et des travailleurs en milieu de santé. Je suis toutefois un économiste de formation et ça tombe bien parce que les préoccupations majeures des Canadiens maintenant tournent autour des questions économiques, du coût de la vie, des investissements dans les emplois de la classe moyenne, y compris au Québec. Donc, responsable maintenant des contrats de dizaines de milliards de dollars par année pour le gouvernement canadien. J'aurai la chance de travailler avec des collègues pour m'assurer que ces contrats, y compris pour les brise-glaces, puissent nous permettre d'investir au Québec et ailleurs pour faire croître l'économie et aider les gens à payer leurs factures.
Minister Valdez, Dave Seguri, iPolitics. While you were taking your oath earlier, Rosie Barton said, anyone who follows you on Instagram knows you like to visit small businesses in your riding. I'm just wondering if you could provide another or better reason as to why you're well-suited and deserving to take on this file.
Thank you for that question. First of all, I just want to thank Minister Ng for all the work she's done. And it just really demonstrates that decoupling small business from the larger portfolio shows the importance, and I've been advocating for it since I have began as an MP. Super excited to be here and support small businesses. And we have been there for them to get them through the pandemic, and we will continue to be there for them. And I'm excited to get started in the role.
Bonjour, Raphaël Pierrot de l'agence QMI, Monsieur Duclos. Donc, vous étiez prêt de signer une entente avec Québec. Jusqu'à quel point vous étiez prêt? Et est-ce que c'est quelque chose, justement, c'est la dernière province, c'est votre province, sur les transferts en santé, évidemment. Est-ce que ça vous fait un petit quelque chose de ne pas avoir mis la touche finale sur ce dossier-là?
Là-dessus, il y a une bonne nouvelle et du travail à faire. La bonne nouvelle, c'est que toutes les provinces, y compris le Québec, et M. Legault a été rapide pour le faire en février dernier, ont accepté l'entente que le premier ministre avait offerte en février. J'étais moi-même présent à la conférence. Donc ça, c'est la très bonne nouvelle. Mais évidemment, avec les défis que vivent les patients, y compris au Québec, les travailleurs de la santé qui ont souffert et souffrent encore des effets de la COVID-19, il va y avoir du travail additionnel à faire et mon collègue Mark Harlan va le faire très bien et je vais être là pour l'appuyer.
Bonjour, M. Duclos, c'est Michel Sabat de la presse canadienne. Je ne vous ai pas entendu répondre directement à la question de mon premier collègue. S'agit-il d'une démotion?
Bien, c'est une promotion et d'une démotion à la fois. Une démotion parce que je ne pourrai plus faire ce que j'ai beaucoup aimé faire à la santé, donc on peut le voir comme ça, mais c'est une promotion significative parce que ça me donne, avec d'autres collègues évidemment, des outils majeurs. On parle de dizaines de milliards de dollars en contrats annuels. Les chasseurs, les navires, y compris les brise-glaces, les sous-marins, tous les contrats d'approvisionnement en matière de nouvelles technologies, tout ça, ça passe par approvisionnement et services publics. Services publics, d'ailleurs, ça porte un bon nom parce qu'on veut, avec d'autres collègues, travailler pour accroître la qualité des services publics dont les Canadiens ont besoin. Donc, c'est beaucoup d'impact ou bien direct dans la vie des Canadiens quand on parle de création d'emplois et de qualité de service, ou d'impact indirect parce que ça va aussi impliquer la collaboration avec d'autres ministres, y compris le ministre de la Santé. Parce qu'il y a quelque chose qu'on a commencé à mettre en place qui va aider près de 9 millions de Canadiens, c'est l'assurance dentaire. Et avec mon collègue Marc Hollande, je vais être responsable d'aider à mettre ça en place. Il y a un nouveau régime d'assurance dentaire qui va être pleinement opérationnel en 2025. C'est un programme qui va reposer sur un fournisseur central qui va pouvoir aider tous les Canadiens, surtout ceux de niveau de revenus moyens et faibles, à avoir accès à des soins dentaires. Et ça passe par, à nouveau, un travail collaboratif majeur entre Santé Canada et Services publics et Approvisionnement Canada.
Minister Valdez, I was hoping that you could pull back the curtain a little bit and give us your account of how you were informed that you were going to be a cabinet minister for the first time, the first Filipino-Canadian cabinet minister. What was that like and what was going through your mind?
Thank you for that question. I am truly honored to have the opportunity to be here. It's an honor to be here, and I want to thank the Prime Minister, my colleagues. They've all supported me in this journey, and the fact that I got called and was given the opportunity means a lot to me, and more so, it means a lot to both for Filipino representation across the country. We are 1 million strong, and so just ensuring that they have their voice, and I'm happy to be there and to represent. And for the portfolio for small businesses, it's incredibly important that we focus on the small businesses because they are the backbone of our economy, and I truly believe that. Being that I was a small business entrepreneur myself. So I'm just truly honored to be here, and I'm grateful to the Prime Minister and to the residents of Mississauga Streetsville. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity for being here.
Thank you, Minister. Last question.
Take us to the moment. I believe you were the biggest emotional reaction in the room. Just take us to the moment. What was going through your mind? We believe there were tears. Just we're trying to get to the human interest of that, please.
Yeah, I was trying to hold back my tears, but I couldn't because it is a very powerful moment. My parents immigrated from Zambia, Africa, so from the Philippines to Zambia, Africa, to give me a better life, and it's their hard work that motivated me to run, and through their hard work, I said I can do it too. And so I actually want to thank my parents. So in that moment, I was thinking about them, Kyle, Cassidy, and my husband, Christopher, for supporting me because I couldn't be here without them.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes our scrum. Merci tout le monde.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hello.
guys.
Hello.
So we're here to answer your questions.
Thanks so much for being here. Dylan Robertson with the Canadian Press. My question is for Minister LeBlanc. I want to get your thoughts on a foreign interference inquiry as well as a registry in both languages, please.
So our government has always taken the issue of foreign interference not only in the democratic institutions, but more generally very seriously. We have done important work in this area. The Prime Minister asked me in June to work with opposition parties to look at next steps after Mr. Johnston's departure. I'm very optimistic about that work. I'm confident that my conversations with opposition counterparts will take an important step forward in strengthening Canada's democracy and democratic institutions, and we'll have more to say about that at the right moment. In terms of the foreign agent registry, that was some work that my predecessor in this portfolio had undertaken, and I look forward to discussing with the department and my colleagues the important next steps, recognizing that this is an important part of Canada strengthening our ability to counter foreign interference. Alors, en ce qui a trait aux discussions avec les partis d'opposition, je demeure encore très optimiste quant à notre capacité de travailler ensemble, d'arriver à un consensus approprié pour renforcer nos institutions démocratiques et bâtir la confiance des Canadiens, que nous avons mis sur pied comme gouvernement des mesures importantes, mais nous sommes toujours à la recherche des façons de les renforcer, d'améliorer nos pratiques. Et moi, je suis tout à fait confiant dans les prochaines semaines qu'on aura une annonce à faire quand on arrive au bon endroit, mais je demeure très optimiste. Et quand on registre des agents étrangers, c'est un travail que le gouvernement a entamé depuis déjà plusieurs mois. Mon collègue a avancé le dossier et j'ai bien hâte de travailler avec mon nouveau ministère afin de compléter ce travail.
Just picking up, Alex Ballingall, Toronto Star, just for Minister LeBlanc, sorry, just picking up on that. What's exactly the holdup? We've been waiting weeks and weeks. There'd been some indication it might happen sooner, and we're still waiting for whatever the process is, the inquiry, I guess, to come. What's the holdup?
I don't think there's a holdup. I think we're continuing to do the important work that Canadians expect of us. The Prime Minister asked me to work collaboratively and constructively with opposition parties. The good news is we're doing exactly that together. It's been a constructive, collaborative exercise. It's a complicated undertaking. We've always said that the next steps after Mr. Johnston's departure in this space are necessarily because of the nature of the issues, intelligence information. It's not a simple undertaking, but the good news is we've made enormous progress together. We had conversations earlier this week. I'm hoping to have conversations again later this week, and I hope to have something important to announce with my colleagues as soon as possible.
Hi, Minister LeBlanc, Rafi Boudjikani, UNCBC. Quite a few municipalities in New Brunswick are eyeing leaving the RCMP. You have roots there. You're the new public safety minister. Do you believe the RCMP should get out of contract policing?
I've taken note in my predecessor's mandate letter and comments made by the Prime Minister about the importance of reforming the RCMP. You're absolutely right. In my province and in the city of Moncton, the RCMP are the municipal and provincial contract police and have been for a long time. That's the case in many other parts of the country. I haven't yet had a chance to meet with the Deputy Minister of Public Safety or the Commissioner of the RCMP, and I look forward to having those conversations, not only with the officials in the Public Safety Department, but obviously with my colleagues who have a lot of experience in this area as well.
Madame Joly. Oui.
Voilà, voilà.
Ah, bon.
Parfait.
Vous êtes une des rares ministres qui conserve son ministère. Il y a beaucoup de nouveaux, il y a beaucoup de changements. Pour vous, quel message M. Trudeau a-t-il voulu envoyer en vous gardant, vous et quelques-uns seulement de vos collègues en place, puis en faisant tous ces changements-là autour de vous?
Premièrement, je tiens à dire que pour ma part, c'est un plaisir, c'est un privilège de demeurer ministre des Affaires étrangères. J'ai le plaisir de représenter le meilleur pays au monde, ici au pays, mais aussi un peu partout à travers la planète, dans un moment qui est important, un moment qui est historique, où essentiellement on doit s'assurer de défendre les intérêts du Canada. Et ça me fait plaisir de travailler avec tous mes collègues, incluant ces deux comparses avec qui je m'entends très bien. Et puis, je pense que le premier ministre vous a dit ce qu'il pensait. L'objectif est vraiment de mettre l'accent sur des enjeux qui préoccupent les Canadiens. On sait que l'inflation, ça a un impact. On sait que les gens trouvent que ça coûte cher à l'épicerie, que le coût de la vie augmente. Alors, notre objectif, c'est de dire aux Canadiens qu'on les a entendus et qu'on va continuer à les défendre dans un moment où on a besoin de travailler ensemble. Et on sait que ce qui est offert par les conservateurs, c'est essentiellement de couper. C'est beaucoup de colère, tandis que de notre côté, nous, on veut construire, puis on a une vision optimiste. Yes, well, of course, it's a pleasure to continue to serve as Canada's foreign minister, defending and representing the best country on earth. And I look forward to working with all my colleagues, including these folks next to me, which are good friends. Of course, we know that this is a pivotal time in history, and more than ever, we need to make sure that Canada is at the table, that we defend our country's interests, and that we increase our influence. Also, when it comes to the message that the Prime Minister and the Cabinet is sending today, well, first and foremost, we heard Canadians. We know that these are tough times. We know that there's anxiety out there. We know that things are costing more and that people have issues being able to make ends meet. And so our job is to make sure that we work hand in hand with Canadians, that while Conservatives are trying to cut and really ripple down the institutions, we want to build up. We want to make sure that we have an optimistic vision. And that's the message we're sending today.
Thank you, Minister. Last question now.
All right. Judy Trin with CTV News. I'm hoping to ask two questions of Mr. Blair as well as Mr. LeBlanc. First of all, Minister Blair, we know that you are familiar with paramilitary structures that would make your expertise in national defense vital. But what does it say, and what skills do you have to change the culture at National Defense to recruit new faces? Because you are not a diverse face.
No, I'm not. But let me say, first of all, it's an enormous privilege and an honor to have the opportunity to serve Canadians in any capacity in our government, and I'm very honored to have this new role. And as you said, I previously was responsible for a large uniform organization, a police service in Toronto. And during the 10 years in which I was the chief, we actually created the most diverse police service. of any police services in Canada and one of the most diverse in North America. And we did it through not just active recruiting in diverse communities and among women, to bring not just gender and racial equity into the organization, which is also important, but also to bring in a diversity of perspectives. And so I have had that experience in working through a significant cultural change in a uniform organization. I hope to bring that experience, but I also am going to build on some extraordinary work that's already been done by my predecessors. I've spoken extensively to Minister Anand and Minister Sajjan about the work that they have done in developing a roadmap for the implementation of the Arbor recommendations, for example. And our government remains resolutely committed to ensuring that we create a work environment for members of the Canadian Armed Forces that is welcoming, supportive of that extraordinary organization and the remarkable men and women who work within it.
Minister LeBlanc, your colleague, Minister Joly, just said we're listening to Canadians. I'd like to know I would like to press you a little more on the Foreign Agent Registry. Just this past week, you had a former RCMP officer basically be arrested for foreign interference. If he was on a Foreign Agent Registry, if that existed, he would have to register. Why are you not moving that forward, given this pressing issue? And does it have anything to do with the fact that in 2016, Canada signed an agreement with China to help it fight anti-corruption and to seize and share in its assets that were allegedly stolen?
Maybe my colleague can speak to the particular example with respect to China. I'm not familiar, obviously, with the details. Something in 2016, I think I was House Leader or Minister of Fisheries and Oceans at the time. I don't share your pessimism that we're not moving on the Foreign Agent Registry. We are moving. Again, it's a complicated, sensitive issue. We want to move in the right way. I've taken note, I'm not going to comment on a criminal case that's now before the justice system in Canada, but we've taken note, obviously, of the important work that the police are continuing to do in terms of combating foreign interference and those who would seek to undermine Canadian institutions. I look forward to continuing to strengthen the work that our government's already done. As Minister of Democratic Institutions, I've been involved in some of this work over the last number of years. But we've always said and continue to say that we're looking for the best ideas and the best suggestions to strengthen and reinforce our ability as a country to resist foreign interference. The registry is part of that work. It's by no means a perfect and simple or only answer. So we're going to continue to work in a number of areas, and I'm going to get to work on exactly that in the next hour and a half.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes our scrum. Merci tout le monde.
Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you. Have a great summer.
Hello, everyone. We are very happy to answer your questions. Bonjour tout le monde. Nous sommes très contents de répondre à vos questions.
Hi there, Adam Hiras, New Brunswick Telegraph-Journal. A question for Minister Pettipat-Taylor. Minister, you've been Health Minister, ACOA, official languages. How do you see yourself fitting in Veteran Affairs and your qualifications for that role?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for that very important question. I have to say I'm extremely thrilled and honored to have been asked to be the Minister responsible for Veterans Affairs and also the Associate Minister for Defense. Over the past number of years, as you've indicated, I've had a number of portfolios and really looking forward to this one ahead. As you're probably aware, I've got a background in social work and in counseling and also worked with the RCMP for the past 23 years before I entered politics. So I feel that I'm very well equipped to take on this portfolio. Really want to thank Minister McCauley. He's done a tremendous amount of work over the past number of years, and I'm just really excited to continue doing that work.
Hi, Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News. Minister Virani, as Parliamentary Secretary for Justice, you said what was happening to Uyghurs was genocide, and you voted for that motion. Do you still believe this to be the case as Justice Minister now?
Thank you very much. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the question, Rafi. So I just wanted to first off start out and say thank you to the Prime Minister for conferring me the confidence for fulfilling this role, to acknowledge the important work that David Lametti did as my predecessor. I was honored to work with him as his Parliamentary Secretary. I think the situation with the Uyghurs is extremely concerning. That's why I casted that vote in that direction at that time. The situation with the Uyghurs, like many human rights abuses around the planet, demonstrates that very significant human rights violations are occurring around the planet. We've seen what's been happening with Rohingya in Southeast Asia. We see what's happening with Uyghurs. I think the issue, and I speak to you now, Rafi, as somebody who has actually prosecuted war crimes at the Rwandan tribunal, the legal threshold is quite high for proving genocide. That doesn't mean investigations shouldn't take place. What I think needs to be done is we need a sense of openness so that we can have UN and international bodies on the ground, on the territory, conducting forthright investigations so we can discern the evidence and amass the evidence to verify whether that is in fact what is transpiring. The legal threshold is high, as it should be for the most heinous crime known to mankind. Thank you. Donc, d'aborder, j'ai dit effectivement, j'ai remercié le Premier ministre en termes de sa confiance en moi pour remplir ce rôle comme ministre de la Justice et procureur général du Canada. Aussi, je voulais juste saluer et remercier David Lametti, un homme extraordinaire avec qui j'ai eu l'opportunité de travailler comme son secrétaire parlementaire. Il a fait un superbe travail, donc je lui suis dans ses footsteps, effectivement. Ce que j'ai mentionné à Rafi en anglais, j'ai dit que concernant les Uyghurs, on peut voir plusieurs enjeux, plusieurs endroits partout au monde où on trouve qu'il y a des indices ou des facteurs qui touchent le génocide. Donc, par exemple, on a déjà discuté les Rohingyas dans l'Asie Sud-Est. On discute la Chine et ce qui est arrivé avec les Uyghurs. Vous allez savoir que aussi on a passé une motion concernant les Uyghurs vis-à-vis un programme d'immigration pour accueillir 10 000 personnes, si je me rappelle bien, qui sont en train de fuir leur traitement comme Uyghurs dans la région de la Chine et dans les pays qui entourent la Chine. Mais ce qu'il faut souligner, c'est que moi, j'ai eu l'opportunité de travailler comme un procureur au tribunal international, the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, pour le génocide qui est survenu en Rwanda. Ce que j'ai appris dans cette expérience et le fait d'établir le génocide est tellement difficile comme il faut le faire parce que ce crime-là est le plus sévère crime qui est connu au monde. Disons que dans le domaine juridique, il n'y a pas une autre chose qui est plus sévère que le génocide. Donc, c'est-à-dire que maintenant, vis-à-vis les Uyghurs ou vis-à-vis les autres régions, la chose qu'il faut faire, c'est qu'il faut avoir une ouverture, une transparence, il faut avoir accès pour les enquêteurs, par exemple avec les Nations Unies ou d'autres organisations internationales, pour vérifier sur le terrain s'il y a des indices et la preuve pour démontrer actuellement que le génocide existe. Merci.
Just another question for you, Minister Varani. Alex Ballingall from the Star. What is your personal opinion, or how do you feel personally about Quebec's Bill 21, the secularism bill? And would you intervene in the Supreme Court of Canada if that law is challenged and goes up that far?
So I don't think my personal opinions are critical here, Alex, so I'll just be frank with you and say that what I'm going to say to you is that a bill that touches upon fundamental rights, that touches on the Charter, is of concern to me as the Attorney General of Canada. It's of concern to our government and certainly to the Prime Minister, and it should be of concern to all Canadians. So that's the first point. The second point is that what I will reiterate is the statement that's already been made by the Prime Minister and by my predecessor, that when you have a bill that touches on such important issues, such as equality rights, freedom of religion, and the ability of people to function in civil society as teachers, as judges, as police officers, etc. Those raise very significant issues. What I would say to you is that what the Prime Minister and Minister Lametti, my predecessor, had already stated is that we are following the situation very, very closely. Arguments have been heard at the Quebec Court of Appeal. The decision is under reserve. As soon as that decision is released, we will analyze it. I will read it thoroughly, back to front, to make sure that I understand it and that we understand it. I'll provide advice to the Prime Minister, and we will make a decision about our next steps. The Prime Minister has been very clear that if it gets to the Supreme Court of Canada, we are going to be there as interveners, putting our best foot forward as the Government of Canada about our interpretation of that law, but also about our defense, which has always been steadfast, of the Charter of Rights and the rights that are contained therein, including freedom of religion and equality rights. Donc, ce que je viens de mentionner à M. Berlinghall, c'est que effectivement, mes propres avis à moi ne sont pas importants. Moi, je suis ici pas comme juste un homme sur la rue, je suis ici comme procureur général du Canada et ministre de la Justice. C'est-à-dire qu'on prend une décision comme un gouvernement, comme un cabinet et la décision finale du Premier ministre. Deuxième chose, c'est qu'effectivement, vis-à-vis de la loi 21, ça touche des enjeux très délicats et très significatifs, c'est-à-dire les droits concernant l'égalité et les droits de liberté d'expression et la liberté religieuse qui est protégée par l'article 2 de la Charte. C'est-à-dire que à ce moment-là, on est dans une situation temporaire, disons que la Cour d'appel du Québec vient de recevoir les arguments. Ils ont la décision sous réserve. Lorsqu'ils rendent une décision, je vais le lire complètement. Je vais provisionner mes avis et mes conseils au cabinet, mes collègues du cabinet et aussi au Premier ministre, disons les prochaines étapes qu'il faut suivre. Mais ce que je peux souligner, c'est que le Premier ministre et M. Lametti, mon prédécesseur, étaient déjà très clairs, disant que si cet arrêt rentre au Cour suprême, au niveau du Cour suprême, on sera là. On sera là comme le gouvernement du Canada. On va intervenir. On va intervenir vis-à-vis la position du gouvernement du Canada, mais aussi en défense de la Charte des droits et libertés. Merci.
You can stay there, Minister Ferrani. This one's for you as well.
These are the veterans, right?
Dave Seguri, iPolitics. You touched on it a little bit earlier, but just wondering if you've spoken directly to Mr. Lametti since you learned you'd be taking his job, and if so, what did that conversation look like?
I've not spoken to David Lametti yet, but I will be speaking with him very, very soon. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our scrum. Thank you, everyone. Merci tout le monde.
I had questions for Gould. Fraser had a question. Go, Fraser. It's about your job. It's about facing down Andrew Scheer. That's good.
Bon après-midi tout le monde, c'est un plaisir d'être ici avec vous pour célébrer une bonne occasion avec mes collègues. It's wonderful to be here, folks. This is an important day as we continue to build the team that's going to help advance policies that make life more affordable for Canadians and help support communities that are dealing with challenges that are common to countries all over the world. Happy to take what questions that you may have. I don't have any grand opening remarks, but I want to give a huge congratulations before I leave the microphone to one of our newest ministers and a dear personal friend of mine, Minister Beach. Congratulations, Terry. We're happy to take what questions you may have.
Yeah, I'll start with you, Mr. Fraser. This housing and infrastructure portfolio, does that mean that you are going to take a greater effort to tie infrastructure grants to provinces and municipalities to housing construction? And just generally, we've seen rents skyrocket this year, prices continue to rise despite high interest rates. What are you going to do about housing?
Look, in the time that I've got to answer your question, I'm afraid we won't cover everything that we're thinking on, even though it's only been a few hours since the formal appointment. But the reality is we understand that housing is a bottleneck to economic growth. It's a real challenge for people my age and younger who are trying to get into the market. But it's also a real challenge for low-income families. There's no simple solutions, but if we continue to advance measures that help build more stock, that help make sure it's easier for people to get into the market, and make sure we're offering protections for low-income families, particularly in vulnerable renting situations, we're going to be able to make a meaningful difference. But to the opening of your question about the combination of infrastructure with housing, and unequivocal yes, we're going to be working very hard to ensure that we're looking at infrastructure projects and housing projects, not in isolation from one another, but looking at how people actually live their lives. If you take a people-focused approach to adopting policies, you're going to come to understand that it's awfully convenient when people have transit options where they live, that people are dealing with municipal services where their homes already are. If we encourage cities and communities to build more housing where infrastructure already exists or where it's planned to be, we're going to be able to leverage more progress for every public dollar that's invested into these important areas that really impact people's day-to-day quality of life.
Hi, Minister Fraser. At immigration, you said you want to welcome 500,000 new Canadians in 2025. responsible for housing now, how will you make sure they have affordable places to live, especially given housing is a primarily provincial, territorial, municipal jurisdiction?
Look, I think there's a really important issue, and I spoke at length on a number of occasions about this while I was serving as the Minister of Immigration. You got to realize that people need housing whether they've been here for a dozen generations or they got here last month. The housing needs may be unique for different people who come from different communities, but the answer is, at least in part, to continue to build more stock. I want to be very, very careful to caution anyone, and not to say, Rafi, this was your argument, by the way, but I would urge caution to anyone who believes the answer to our housing challenges is to close the door on newcomers. The reality is, when I talk to developers in my capacity as the Minister of Immigration before today, one of the chief obstacles to completing the projects that they want to get done is having access to the labor force to build the houses that they need. If we don't continue to welcome people through thoughtful immigration policies that are going to meet the economic needs of our communities, we won't maximize our economic potential. But if we focus on working with communities to build the housing stock that they need, not just for newcomers, but also for multi-generational Canadians, we're going to be able to attract the people with the skills we need to help solve some of our social challenges, including housing and healthcare, rather than exacerbating the pressures on those systems today.
Thank you. My next question is for the new minister, Minister Beach. Your new minister today being sworn in into a brand new portfolio as well. Can you explain to us what Citizen Services is?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for my first question as a new minister. And of course, it's a great honor to be the new Minister of Citizen Services. This is really where the rubber hits the road in providing services to citizens right across the country. There's a big chunk of ESDC that's included in this portfolio. There is also a bit of digital governance that's included in this portfolio. So I'm very excited about having the opportunity to go out and provide excellent customer service. I built a bit of a reputation in my own community in Burnaby, North Seymour, as trying to provide excellent customer service, and now I have the opportunity to try and provide that for all Canadians across the country, and I'm really excited to take that on.
Be a bit more specific, sorry, than just saying that it's providing services to citizens?
Well, I can tell you that I met my deputy minister about 5 minutes ago. She handed me a piece of paper with a whole bunch of bullet points on it, but I'm about less than an hour in, so I'm going to get fully briefed and I'm going to provide you much fulsome answers from here on out.
Question pour Monsieur Fraser. Quand vous étiez ministre de l'Immigration, vous disiez que l'immigration amenait des gens pour travailler en construction. Est-ce que vous pourriez nous dire comment vous prévoyez travailler avec le nouveau ministre de l'Immigration?
Oui, j'ai eu des discussions ce matin sur cet enjeu. C'est très important pour collaborer avec le ministre Miller pour assurer le gouvernement, attirer les personnes avec les compétences essentielles pour construire les maisons. J'ai adopté une politique pour les sélections dans les catégories spécifiques pour choisir des personnes avec des skilled traits en English, mais je m'excuse. Et c'est essentiel pour continuer de collaborer avec le ministre pour adapter les nouvelles politiques, pour assurer l'industrie à la personne avec les compétences pour construire des maisons qui est nécessaire pour soutenir la croissance des communautés partout dans notre pays.
Minister Beach, just seeking some more clarity on your role here. You met with your GM. Is this only a Service Canada ESDC thing, or are you working with other departments, and if so, which ones fall into your portfolio?
Well, ESDC was definitely the headline. There were some things in there such as passports. There were some things, dental care was included in there. But there's also this digital governance component from Treasury Board, but exactly how that applies to this, I'm not quite clear yet, but I hope that provides some clarification.
Monsieur Fraser, bonjour. Michel Sabat de la presse canadienne. Votre gouvernement, vous l'avez bien remarqué, se fait constamment attaquer sur le coût de la vie, le coût du logement. Qu'est-ce que vous allez changer à la stratégie du gouvernement pour paraître davantage crédible?
OK, c'est difficile en français, mais j'ai envie de pratiquer et je m'excuse en avance si j'ai fait des erreurs. C'est très important pour comprendre l'opportunité d'adopter des politiques complémentaires pour infrastructure et logement. Quand j'ai visité des communautés qui ont besoin beaucoup de logements, ce n'est pas juste un enjeu pour construire une nouvelle maison. C'est essentiel pour construire l'infrastructure, le système pas pour le bus, pas le train. I'm looking for transit. OK, oh, transport, OK, c'est OK. C'est essentiel quand je fais des investissements dans le système pour améliorer la qualité d'eau pour des communautés. C'est important de comprendre l'infrastructure et service des logements. Just in English to clarify, because I feel on my back foot en français, it's really important that we take a look at how people live their lives in communities. People don't live their lives as a transit rider 1 hour and the next as a resident of their home. They don't live their life as a coach for the local sports team who needs a ball field. They live their lives in communities as ordinary people. We all go through our days with different needs for housing, for transit, for recreation. To be able to better build these things together, to allow communities to adopt plans that will not simply build more units, but will build more units in a way that provide people with a quality of life they get to enjoy in their communities is going to be essential. I think leveraging the two different portfolios as a coordinated effort that will help improve housing is going to allow us to make smarter decisions that gets more out of every public dollar that's spent. When we take this coordinated approach, I'm very excited. This is something that we started to do some work on under Minister Hussein's leadership, but to really build the two in concert with one another to maximize the impact it's going to have on people's lives and communities with the public funds that we are making available as a major government priority is something I'm very excited about.
Thank you, Minister. Last question.
This is for Minister Holland. I know you've just become the health minister, but in your short time thinking about this, or maybe you've thought about this longer, there's been demands that have seemed to increase recently for a public inquiry into Canada's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Would you support launching such an inquiry?
Well, let me say at the onset, the work that was done by public health officials across Canada was absolutely extraordinary. The response to an unprecedented pandemic that none of us anticipated meant that Canada had one of the lowest death rates in the world and one of the most successful COVID responses anywhere. But one of the things that is critical is to take a look, and this is what the government has been doing, and certainly as minister I'm going to continue to do, to say what are the best practices, what are the learning that we can glean from that experience. God forbid we should ever be faced with another pandemic or a similar health circumstance. We want to make sure that we continue to lead the world and we use those lessons to reduce the pain and impact that a future such event might occur. So we're open to having conversations with Canadians and with opposition parties about how we can best dig into that, how we can best learn from the experiences that we had so that we can move forward in the best possible way.
Thank you. That concludes our scrum. Merci tout le monde.
Merci tout le monde.
Bonjour à tous. Hi everyone. Impatient de prendre vos questions. Ready to take your questions.
Hi, Fraser Needham, APTN National News. This is for the new Crown Indigenous Relations Minister. How do you think your unique background, I suppose, and your experience in Canada will help you in your new portfolio?
Thank you for that question. And you know, the last many years I've been working on issues relating to Indigenous people across Canada, including the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, Indigenous Languages Commission, and so on. But what I think I bring to the table is a unique understanding of the rights-based issue that is internationally grounded, and I think what we need to do in Canada is to build on the work that our government has done, not just in respect of the laws that are important, but also to continue to rebuild that relationship, one that will ensure that there's self-determination at the core of every relationship that we have. Minister Miller has done an incredible job during his tenure, and I've worked with him, and I work with Minister Bennett as her parliamentary secretary. So I believe I bring a unique level of strengths, but of course there's a lot more I need to learn, and over the next weeks I will be working with our officials as well as engaging and meeting with Indigenous organizations and communities across Canada.
Okay, and maybe just as a quick follow-up, not a day goes by that we don't hear stories about the Prairie Green landfill. It's really at a stalemate. Families continue to suffer. What is the federal government going to do to expedite that process? Everybody wants a search, but it's not happening.
Look, this is an absolute heart-wrenching issue, one I've been following through the media. There are many different issues that I think like this that exist right now. For me, on my day one, is to commit to ensuring that we support and get to the bottom of this. And after the briefings, I will engage with those who are directly impacted, particularly the families, and ensure that we have a solution that they feel is just and appropriate.
Mackenzie Global Minister Miller, questions for you. You spent a lot of time and worked quite hard in your portfolio, built a lot of relationships and worked on a number of different files. Are you disappointed to be leaving that portfolio, something that I think it's clear you really cared about in your time in that position?
Yeah, thanks, Mackenzie. You know, it isn't a position that I'm leaving without regret for a number of reasons. You mentioned some of them, personal commitment, just the view over the last couple of years that we've been able to move the narrative on how Canada engages with Indigenous peoples, and you know, anyone that is in my job that doesn't take this personally is probably not doing it well, and I know that's why I trust that Gary will be able to take this over successfully. But you know, I'm not arrogant enough to think that this work was all done by one person. It takes work to be done. Minister Bennett put a lot of balls on the 1 yard line for me to drive home, and hopefully we've done that for Gary. And so I am sad. It doesn't mean that my relationships that I've built with Indigenous leaders and just members of communities are going away. I've made a number of personal commitments about learning Mohawk. It'll be my second year this year of participating in Sundance. It's just not something I've talked about much publicly, but those personal commitments remain. I have been able to develop a deep commitment to Indigenous issues that I, quite frankly, probably didn't have in that measure 4 years ago. So, you know, I have hope for Canadians that are perhaps in my position and don't understand the issues as much, that if a guy like me can understand it, not everyone's going to be Crown Indigenous Relations Minister, but if people can understand it, I think there's hope for the country. So, you know, you look at a minister for respect, compassion, understanding, obviously financial commitments, and that's something I know Gary will be able to drive home as well. You know, in terms of my move to the Minister of Immigration and Refugees, this is an issue that I care deeply personally, not only because I come from a riding in downtown Montreal that has a tremendous amount of need for services in immigration and refugee files, a lot of first-generation Canadians looking to make Canada their home, and they've done something that I haven't done, which is fight to be Canadian. I was just given it. My kids were born out two in the States and one in Sweden. My wife is Swedish. She's an immigrant herself. And my grandkid, who you perhaps got a snapshot of, is perhaps the only one born in Canada, but comes from a racialized background with Haitian heritage. So this is personal, but it's also a commitment that you know, when I asked the Prime Minister and I got into politics, I said, just let me, I didn't ask him for a job. None of us are in the position to ask the Prime Minister for jobs, but I said, just allow me to make a difference, and this is going to allow me to make a difference in taking a moment in time in shaping how Canada and the future of Canada looks like. And that is through immigration, an open, just, and compassionate immigration system that has become a characteristic of our government, but is frankly characteristic of all Canadians that have big hearts and want to open up Canada to the world. Oui, écoutez, je vous ai donné une très longue réponse. Je ne vais pas traduire en toutes lettres, mais c'est pas sans vous cacher que je suis déçu de quitter cette position. C'est une position que j'aurais volontiers pu garder. Ce n'est pas à ma discrétion. On sert tous. Pour le premier ministre, on est tous remplaçables, on le sait tous, mais j'ai pu tisser durant les 4 dernières années, que ce soit service aux Autochtones, relations couronne autochtone, des relations très intimes, personnelles avec des gens, des chefs, des leaders de communautés, des particuliers, des Autochtones dans les communautés. Et c'est un dossier, ce sont des enjeux qui m'interpellent de façon profonde. Et puis c'est quelque chose que j'ai pu développé durant mes 4 années dans ce rôle, puis dans un moment très précis de notre histoire où l'avenir avec nos relations autochtones va modeler ce qu'est le Canada, ce qu'on comprend de ce qu'est le Canada. Et contrairement à ce qui s'enseignait dans les écoles il y a 30 ans, mes enfants reviennent de l'école puis ils apprennent la vraie histoire du Canada. Donc, j'ai l'honneur d'avoir pu, dans ce moment précis de 4 années, changer et puis aider à modeler ce que je comprends être la vraie histoire de notre pays et puis la direction où elle peut s'en aller. On a assisté durant les 8 dernières années à un transfert de richesse au peuple autochtone inouï, puis qui n'a jamais eu lieu dans l'histoire du Canada. Et ça doit continuer. Une question de justice, mais aussi question de s'assurer qu'on soit tous égaux dans notre pays. Et j'ai beaucoup apprécié ce rôle. Alors, oui, c'est avec regret que je quitte la position, mais j'ai aussi demandé au premier ministre, j'ai jamais demandé une job, ce serait arrogant de le faire, puis j'ai pas l'arrogance de présumer que c'est l'affaire d'une seule personne. Je citerai, bien, je nommerai notamment la ministre Bennett qui a supporté beaucoup de dossiers dont j'ai pris le crédit, notre équipe a pris le crédit, mais c'est à elle à laquelle revient cet honneur et j'espère qu'on a pu faire la même chose pour Gary. Le test d'un bon ministère, d'un bon ministre, c'est pas d'avoir fait sa job, mais d'avoir bien planifié puis mis les assises pour que le prochain ministre puisse prendre la balle au bon puis courir avec. Puis j'ai confiance en Gary avec son histoire personnelle, avec son engagement envers les peuples autochtones. Et je suis très confiant pour l'avenir. Alors, ça n'enlèverait en rien mes engagements personnels que j'ai entrepris envers les communautés autochtones, notamment les langues et participation dans les cérémonies. Mais j'ai l'occasion de faire une différence dans l'avenir de mon pays en immigration, puis dans un dossier qui m'interpelle non seulement côté professionnel, dans mon comté, au centre-ville de Montréal, mais profondément au niveau de ma famille. Ma femme vient de la Suède, elle est immigrante. Mes 3 enfants sont nés à l'extérieur du pays. Puis j'ai un petit-fils qui il est né au Canada, mais il a une descendance haïtienne aussi. Alors, c'est l'avenir de notre pays, l'immigration. Il ne faut pas se le cacher. Il y a des pénuries de main-d'œuvre partout au pays et ça passera uniquement par l'immigration si on va s'en sortir de façon économique et de façon humanitaire et dans un contexte et un but de compassion.
Okay, last question. Thank you, Minister.
Kirsten Williams, APTN. This is for the new Crown Indigenous Relations Minister. Minister Miller just talked about his ongoing commitment to maintaining relationships with Indigenous peoples. What are you going to do as the new minister to build a relationship with Indigenous peoples and communities and earn their trust?
Thank you. I have been working the last 7.5 years in many different capacities, engaging with individuals and organizations and communities across Canada. I was very much involved in developing Bill C-91, an act with respect to Indigenous languages, and I was able to go across the country talking to communities about the need to protect languages. During the 262, Bill 262 brought forward by former MP Romeo Sagnash, I worked with him, and then it became Bill C-15, so throughout it, I worked as Parliamentary Secretary to, again, engage with communities to bring this forward. During my role as Parliamentary Secretary to Justice and Attorney General, I worked on development of an Indigenous Justice Strategy, as well as implementation of the UN Declaration. I believe over the years I have built many important relationships. I certainly have a lot more to continue, but my commitment is to continue the work. The issue of reconciliation is not and cannot be an afterthought. It needs to be a fundamental core value of our government. I think since we took office, we have demonstrated the importance of reconciliation and all the different elements that go into it. As someone who, this month is what's called Black July. My family came here 40 years ago as a result of what happened where I'm originally from, which is Sri Lanka. And what I bring here is that lived experience of what survival means, what going through oppression and colonialism means. And I bring it in a very personal sense that I think, it's very unique from what Minister Miller has demonstrated, which is, I'm such an admirer of the work he's done. But it's also different. And I bring that to work every single day. I need to look at every Indigenous child in the eye and say, this country will be vastly different going forward than our past. And I think the Prime Minister has demonstrated, our government's demonstrated this, but we will continue to work hard to achieve this. What I can bring to the table is really to listen, to engage, and to decolonize the way, continue to decolonize the way that governments engage with people. I think over the years with Minister Miller and Bennett, it's been a completely different relationship, and I want to build on those relationships and ensure that we build a better country for all, and one that is rooted on reconciliation.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes our scrum. Merci tout le monde.
Hello. Hello. Everyone's so quiet. Hello.
Hi, this one's for Mr. Qualtrough. Dave Segre, Politics. Just wondering what your position is right now on the calls for a national public inquiry into the safe sport crisis.
Well, thanks for the question. I think it's the most important issue facing our sports system in Canada today. The Prime Minister knows how strongly I believe in the power of sport to do good and make positive change, but also been very concerned about how trust in our sports system has been eroding. So I absolutely think we need to address this issue. We need to make sure that athlete victims are supported. I'm going to spend a day getting caught up on the file, of course, but very soon we will come forward with a plan to make sure that the systemic issues around abuse in sport and safe sport are addressed with athletes at the center of that process to make sure that our kids have a safe, welcoming environment to play sport.
Minister Hussain, a lot of the narrative in the media has been that you're getting shuffled out of housing because of a slow delivery on that file. You're going into international development. I'm wondering what you're going to do to make sure you achieve what's being put forward in your mandate and what you see as the top priorities for the aid file.
Today is a great day. I believe today is another signal that our government is really focused and rededicating ourselves and our team to the issues that face Canadians. I know that the affordability issues are top of mind, including housing, and our government has been very strong in that file, particularly with the National Housing Strategy, investing record amounts of money in affordable housing, but also working with municipalities and other orders of government to increase density and more housing supply, including affordable housing across the country. On international development, I mean, Canada has been a strong leader globally to make sure that we're a force for good, that we're there to project our values, that we're there to protect the most vulnerable and to be good partners to countries that are building capacity to serve women and children, making sure that those who are affected disproportionately by conflict are helped through Canadian assistance. I was in Nigeria in April and I saw firsthand some of the work and the really positive impacts that Canadian development assistance is having on the ground, really reinforcing the good work that's being done by civil society, by activists, by change makers, and I think that's what Canada's role is in this world, to really harness our power, to engage with everyone and to build a better future for all of us.
Thank you, Minister. A question for Minister Kara. Wondering about the idea of an inquiry on the pandemic, just given the criticism that we've gotten from the British Medical Journal about the outcomes for seniors, for other disadvantaged groups in society. Do you think we actually need to call an inquiry and look at those issues?
Look, I think as my colleagues just mentioned, today is a good day, a day to, again, reinforce the commitments that we made to Canadians, particularly tackle the big issues that we're all talking about, whether it's affordability on healthcare, making sure that we have all the voices. I always say diversity is a fact, but inclusivity is a choice. And as a government, we have been very deliberate in being inclusive and making sure that we're listening to the voices of all Canadians. And I look forward to doing the amazing work of my predecessors to continue to doing that, to continue to do that work and making sure we're listening to Canadians and doing that work with them and ensuring that we can continue to build an inclusive Canada for all. Thank you.
Sorry, I have one more question for Minister Suds. A lot of people have kind of posited that you're in cabinet because you're an Ottawa area MP and that was vacant with Mona Fortier being dropped. I'm just wondering if you could speak to what you bring to your file other than geography.
Sure. Thank you for the question, and obviously thrilled to be here with my colleagues today and celebrate this new caucus and the work that we have ahead of us. I look forward to the challenge. The file that I've been asked to serve on, families, children, and social development, is a critical piece, and there's a lot of work to be done as we continue to work with the provinces and territories on rolling out early learning and childcare, excuse me. And so I look forward to that. I've been in Ottawa and served in previous capacities and look forward to bringing that experience to light. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, that concludes our scrum. Merci tout le monde.
Thank you all.
Bonjour.
We're happy to take questions, though.
Hi, Rafi Boudjikyan, UNCBC. Minister Le Boutillier, whether you're tackling tidal energy on the East Coast or salmon fisheries on the West Coast, there is a lot on your new plate. Are you planning on developing your English language skills to speak to your new constituents?
Hi, I'm really happy today. It's a good day for me and for I'm really proud to be a Minister of Fishery, Ocean and Coast Guard. And for me, it's important to work with the population in the East Coast. And I live in Gaspésie. I come from Gaspésie. I live near of the sea, and I know the issue. And I work together with the population to take pour trouver des solutions. And I promise you, I will continue to practice and learn English.
This one's for Minister Pascal. Ryan Templeton with the National Post. You've been quite critical in the past of the impact of big tech on cultural industries. I wonder, with the government in a standoff with big tech over C-18, with Google and Meta, how you plan to address these problems and how you plan to find a resolution?
Well, my predecessor, Pablo, did a great job with passing C-11 and C-18. And my goal is going to be the same, which is to make sure that our media industry and our cultural industry thrive, and to make sure that we have news and journalism so that the population can be well informed and our democracy strong. Donc, mon prédécesseur, Pablo, a fait un travail incroyable en faisant adopter la loi C11 et C18. Et comme lui, je vais poursuivre les mêmes objectifs, c'est-à-dire de s'assurer que les industries culturelles puis le secteur des médias, que c'est un secteur qui est fort, qui est en santé, parce que dans une démocratie, on a besoin d'une presse libre et en santé financièrement.
Thanks. Marco Vigliotti, iPolitics. Minister O'Regan, I just wanted to talk a bit about the strike. I know obviously we have a vote on Thursday and Friday. During the strike the past 2 weeks, heard a lot from stakeholders, businesses, complaining about how it impacted their bottom lines, how billions of dollars were lost, how it really kind of jeopardized Canada's reputation as a good, as a port of entry for goods. Considering all that, considering that the railways are also warning that because of this, there might be a grain shipping crisis in the fall, I just want your honest assessment. Do you think your office handled this strike appropriately?
BC ports are open right now. That's very important to remember. And of course the vote will be held on Friday, and I have a great respect for the members' decision on this. I think that there's You know, I think our mediators did an extraordinary job in keeping parties together. And at the end of the day, helping them arrive at a deal that I think was beneficial to both sides. The membership of one of those groups, the employers, has accepted it. The membership of the other will vote on it on Friday. I feel very confident in the deal, but right now it's up to the membership. And I think at some point down the line, we are going to have a very, I think, careful and thoughtful look about how this is structured. We can't have it happen again. As I've said on several occasions, we cannot go through this again. It has tied up a lot of suppliers. It has tied up a lot of businesses. I'm quite conscious of that. On est content que le syndicat a recommandé que la mise en œuvre de l'accord mais maintenant, en ce moment, les portes sont ouvertes, mais on a besoin de la stabilité à long terme. On a la stabilité pour tous les Canadiens et Canadiennes.
This one's for Mr. Wilkinson, Davis Degree iPolitics. I'm just wondering if you could talk to me about the addition of the word energy to your title. Is that pedantics? Is it some sort of message to Western Canada? And how will it impact your day-to-day work?
Well, it's a message to all of Canada. It's not just a message to Western Canada. It underlines the critical nature of the conversation around energy that we are going through, both with respect to how we address the climate crisis that we are facing, but also how we actually build an economy that's going to be strong and prosperous in a low-carbon future. It is an inclusive word that is quite important. It speaks to offshore wind in Nova Scotia. It speaks to the battery production in Ontario. It speaks to carbon capture and hydrogen in Alberta. It speaks to the energy issues of our day across this country. And just as when we changed the Department of the Environment and added the words climate change, that wasn't just words. That was about focus. And this is very much about focus. This is a priority for this government. It's about building an economy that's going to be strong. And I think this connotes the additional emphasis that we will be putting on that going forward.
En français, s'il vous plaît.
C'est pas seulement un mot. L'énergie, c'est quelque chose qui est très important pour tous les provinces et les territoires du Canada. Et c'est quelque chose qui est très important dans le battre contre le changement climatique, mais aussi dans l'enjeu de comment on peut avoir une économie qui va être prospère dans un avenir de faible émission de carbone. C'est quelque chose qui est très important ici, mais très important dans le monde entier. Et c'est un signe que le gouvernement fait plus d'emphase sur ce sujet à l'avenir.
Thank you, Minister. Last question.
Just for Minister St-Onge, on the government's sort of in a fight, I guess it's fair to say, with Google and Facebook right now, Google and Meta. As a new minister jumping into the middle of that fight, are you prepared to sit at the table across from them and keep going, and can tell us why and how you're going to play that?
Well, of course, just like my predecessor Pablo did, the discussion is always open. The idea is to protect our cultural sector and our media sector, to make sure that our artists, our creators, and also our journalists and our newsrooms are thriving, and that they can continue doing their job in making democracy alive and well. And I think that the web giants know that it's their jobs also to participate in that goal. So, of course, I'm going to speak to them and see where they're at, but I'm going to keep doing the work that Pablo started. Bien sûr, ma porte est toujours ouverte, que ce soit pour les géants du web ou les gens de l'industrie dans le secteur de la culture ou dans le secteur des médias. L'important, c'est d'arriver à une entente, c'est de faire en sorte que nos médias et notre culture peuvent continuer d'exister, d'être en force, de bien représenter le Canada, puis pour les médias, évidemment, d'assurer cette partie-là de la démocratie qui est essentielle, de nous rendre imputables comme gouvernement, mais toutes les personnes en pouvoir. Et donc, je pense que les gens du web comprennent qu'ils vont devoir participer à cette réussite-là de nos médias et de notre culture.
And that concludes our scrum. Merci tout le monde.
Merci.
Hey everyone. Ça va bien?
Très
Good.
bien, merci.
You must be fed up, eh?
Well, we won't keep you long. I see that it started to rain, but listen, I think we're all, without a doubt, very excited to continue the work with the Prime Minister and this incredible team of colleagues. As the Prime Minister said, the country, indeed the world, is facing significant challenges, whether it's on the economy front or on the environment front, and there's a lot of work to do. So we're looking forward to getting started and rolling up our sleeves, for some of us in new work and for some of us in work that we've been doing for a number of years.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Minister Rodriguez. After the last election, the online hate legislation was a promise to pass within first 100 days of government. It did not get the first reading. C18 is stuck in a war with the tech giants. Is moving you to transport a reflection of failure at Heritage on your part?
You call passing those two bills, C11 and C18, a failure? They both passed 2/3 of support in the House of Commons, 2/3 of support in the Senate. Very tough bill, very important bill, very necessary bill that passed. And online safety, we did a consultation across the country, consulting with everyone, different groups, governments, victims of hate online. So that was very important work that was done, and I'm very proud of the team, and I'm looking forward to see what Pascal's going to achieve, because she's absolutely amazing and she's going to do a great job. Le mandat économie de l'avant à patrimoine est énorme. On a réussi à passer le projet de loi C11 qui demande aux streamers de contribuer à Sculpture. On a réussi à passer le projet de loi C18 qui demande à Google et Facebook de contribuer au contenu journalistique canadien. Dans les deux cas, il y a eu 2/3 des députés qui ont voté en faveur, 2/3 des sénateurs qui ont voté en faveur, et on a fait une consultation énorme. On est prêt pour le projet de loi sur la haine en ligne. Alors, il y a un travail énorme qui a été fait, et j'ai confiance en ma collègue Pascal pour poursuivre ce travail important.
Okay, last question.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Minister. I'll keep it quick. It's from my colleagues at Nouveau in Quebec. So I will ask you in French, so hopefully it's good enough that you can respond in French as well. Votre prédécesseur et votre nouveau ministère ont été lourdement critiqués pour leur manque de communication dans le dossier de la voie de contournement à lac mégantic. Avez-vous l'intention de vous rendre sur place et de faire les choses différemment?
Lac mégantic est certainement l'un des endroits où je vais aller en premier pour une raison très simple. C'est une tragédie sans nom. Je me souviens encore où j'étais le jour quand c'est arrivé, les journées qui ont suivi. Il faut que puisse permettre aux gens, aux victimes, aux familles, à ceux qui ont perdu quelqu'un, de pouvoir tourner la page et d'aller de l'avant. Et c'est exactement ce qu'on va faire. Merci.
Merci. That concludes our scrum.
Thank you.